Welcome to yet another episode of Shortcast Over Coffee. Today, my guest is stand-up comedian GK. He's not just a stand-up comedian though. He's a full-time engineer and a part-time theater artist and a movie maker based out of the Bay Area in California. In this episode, I will talk to him about his journey to stand-up comedy and his recent venture, Building 18 Comedy Club, where GK, along with other co-founders, offer a great platform for budding comics. So without further ado, let's get right into it. Hi, GK. Welcome to the podcast.
Hey, hello, Bala. Thank you very much for having me. I'm super excited talking to you today.
Yeah, I have to tell our listeners the story of how I met GK. I know of GK from Ravi Ashwin's YouTube channel. It was IPL, I think 2022 or 2021. Can't remember which one. But GK was a guest on one of Ashwin's shows, and he completely rocked it. And the show was in Tamil, and I was like, wow, where is this guy based out of? And then I run into GK in my own office building one fine day, and I'm like, "Oh, I watched you on the YouTube channel," and then I said hello. So quite a coincidence. So GK, let's get this out of the way. Let's talk about your upcoming shows. What do you have for your fans in Texas?
Fans, I'm not sure I can call them fans yet, but yeah, we've been doing touring with our Tamil stand-up comedy show called Gandhi Kanakku. It is a 2-hour clean, family-friendly Tamil stand-up comedy. Myself and my friend Anant, we perform an hour each, and then we typically have somebody open the show for about 10-15 minutes. So it's about 2 hours, 15 minutes stand-up comedy show. We've done 14 shows so far across the US. And then we have 3 more shows coming up end of September in Austin, Houston, and San Antonio. And then we have a couple of other shows in Boston and potentially New York and a few other cities later this year.
Okay, so this is all in 2023.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, awesome. So GK, coming back to your story, I know it's been a typical undergraduate engineering, grad school life in the US, and then so on and so forth. So when did you realize that you have this uncanny knack of cracking jokes and potential as a stand-up comedian?
So I've always been involved in theater for quite a long time. Like I haven't done much in India, but when I came over to the US for my master's in 2004, I started writing short Tamil the plays and started performing for Diwali and New Year and things like that. So as part of the Indian Student Association in the grad school, so I used to perform short skits. And that was the first time I was actually writing something on my own. So 2004 is probably the first time I've written something end to end. And that worked really well. The response was great. And that's when I thought maybe I should do more of this. So we were a bunch of friends. We were all interested in writing, being on stage and acting and all that. So it started off like that. And then when I moved to the Bay Area in 2007, that's when I started taking theater a little more seriously. So graduated from kind of the skit zone into proper theater. So I auditioned here with a couple of groups, and I got to play small characters on stage. And then while going for the rehearsals, I would sit with them, talk to them about the script, maybe offer some suggestions, whether they take it or not. If I can think of something, some jokes here and there in the script, I would just go talk to the writer director. And slowly I started getting involved with multiple groups in the Bay Area. And 2008, I was on stage for probably 8 or 10 shows in that 1 year. Across multiple different groups in the Bay Area. So 2008 was a really busy year. And after that, I really wanted to be out, stand in front of people, perform, and that applause and all that was very addictive, right? So, and so it started off from there. Then I was in theater for a few years, 2008. and then 2009-10, all the way till 15-16, I was part of multiple theater groups, writing, directing in some cases, and then acting a lot as well. And all these were primarily comedy plays. And my contribution was also primarily comedy dialogues and maybe comedy scripts and things like that. And then I also got involved in Nalaya Iyakunar. It was a reality show for budding directors. So they go through a competition where every round they make a short film, and then you progress through multiple rounds. And then so our team, so I worked with another director from the Bay Area. His name is Maniram. We reached the finals of that show, reality show, but we lost the finals. But it was a good experience working on about 6-7 short films with him. So from theater graduated to short films. And then in 2019, that's when Tamil stand-up was picking up quite a bit. And then we had comedians from India touring the US. And then Karthik Kumar from Evam Stand-up Tamasha, he was here for one of his shows. And after the show, I just casually went and met him, and I was talking to him about my interest in comedy and how I wanted to explore stand-up. But obviously, being here in the US, there was no proper avenues to do Tamil stand-up. Like you can go to a comedy club here or a bar, and then you are going to perform in English. And the people that are going to perform with you, the audience that are going to watch you, are all probably going to be non-Indians mostly. But I wanted to tell stories that I grew up, the kind of stories that I had, and I wanted to tell those stories in Tamil. And then Karthik Kumar said, "Why don't you start something on your own?" But I had no thoughts of doing something like that. But I think that moment when he said that, that's when that spark probably went off, and I thought maybe we should give it a shot, and that's how I got a little more serious into stand-up comedy.
Yeah. Just to give some context, the competition that GK is referring to was eventually won by Karthik Subbaraj, who is now a lead director in Tamil cinema. Has done some great work. So, I mean, coming back to scripting, right? I mean, scripting for a stand-up comedy is entirely different from scripting for a play or a short film. Um, I mean, I have done some really small short films in college as well, and what I understand is scripting for plays is way more difficult than scripting for stand-up. Do you feel so, or do you have a different opinion?
Yeah, that's probably right, because when you script for a play, you have multiple characters. You need a character arc. You need story arcs. You have logical. You cannot have logical holes. There should be a logical flow to everything, and things like that, right? But stand up is maybe I shouldn't say easier, but it is probably easier because you don't need connection between jokes. Like there are different styles in stand-up comedy, and I think stand-up is probably much easier. And also in terms of execution, it's just a comic is on his own, or they can just write whenever they want to. They can just rehearse whenever they want to, and it's there is no dependency on people, and it's much easier to pull off as well. Like a play, you will have to coordinate with a huge group of people, scheduled rehearsals and all that. So that way, I think, yes, stand-up is probably easier to write and also easier to execute.
Yeah. And when we watch movies, right, there is a credit for story or maybe a story idea, and then there is screenplay, which is equivalent to script, right? So I feel like it's something similar to an idea versus doing a startup, right? Where
Yeah.
everyone has ideas, everyone has a story, but writing it scene by scene is extremely difficult. So I mean, I think these days there are lots of courses for screenplay writing. But when you started, did you have any background, or did you just write it? How was that process like?
Yeah, I did not have background when I started. It was just pure excitement, passion, and there was no formal training as such when I started. But after that, in 2010, I did enroll for a filmmaking course in Dianza College here in Cupertino. So I did part-time filmmaking course for about a year and a half.
What do
So
they teach?
like direction, lighting, editing, sound mixing, screenplay writing, pretty much everything, all departments of filmmaking. So it's like one course every 3 months. And it was cheap. It was probably $150 or something for a course. And then I did a few of them. So I did enroll, made some student projects, student short films, and worked with a bunch of people there. But yeah, it doesn't directly help with my stand-up, I would say now, but I just wanted to go learn it formally just for fun. I'm passionate about movies and writing, so I just wanted to learn it as well.
So did you do you see an do you see a difference in your writing skills after the course? You just mentioned that it did not quite help you in your
Yeah,
stand up, but
they do teach you a lot of theoretical ways of approaching script writing and all that, but I don't think you can use those templates or formulas to write because creative writing is something that just happens naturally, right? You cannot plug in formulas and write according to a template. They do teach you a lot of templates to write. There are hooks that you can use to make your writing easier. They do teach all of that, but I think it is easier when you just write whatever comes to your mind first, and then probably go back and plug in those templates or hooks and see whether your writing conforms to some of the grammar that they teach you in film school. I don't think you can use that and write, or maybe it didn't work for me. But after I write, I have gone back and tried to see if it does fit in. It might not always fit in the template, but yeah, there is something that if you want, you can refer back to.
mm. Yeah, I feel like the theater and movie making here in the US is very different from what it is in India. I feel like
Yeah, yeah,
this is so much more methodical, right? They do a lot of rehearsal, and they do improvisation during the rehearsal, and then they are sort of fully cooked by the time they shoot.
oh, yeah, yeah,
And this is something that I've heard from directors and actors from especially from the 90s, which I think was the golden period of comedy, or 90s and early 2000s in at least South Indian cinema, or probably Hindi cinema as well. And a lot of people have agreed to do a film without even a bound script. They will just look at the name of the director, look at the name of the producer, and they'll just agree. And the screenplay writer would be on set, and he will write scenes and pass on the paper, and they would just shoot. And I feel like some of the best comedy movies have come through that procedure. So
yeah.
I don't know. Maybe it's just that it's probably a cultural difference, right?
Right,
Too
right,
much of method can sometimes ruin
right.
improvisation. So
And
people like,
also, especially for comedy, I think it is always nice to have a team of writers instead of writing alone, especially for comedy. I've felt that through my writing experience for theater, short films, and even now for stand-up. As a single person, you can just sit inside a room, look just between you and your laptop, you can come up with something. But then when you brainstorm it with a group of people who are like-minded, who have the same taste in comedy as you, I think that really, really helps.
yeah,
Because you
yeah,
bounce off ideas big time. And then when somebody says something, that triggers a lot of other jokes in you. So comedy, especially, I think it really helps if you write it as a group.
yeah. Especially in Malayalam cinema, there is this director duo called Siddiq Lal,
Yeah, yeah.
and they have done some incredible work. And in almost all of their interviews, they say that the camaraderie that they share, like you said, working with a group works the best for comedy, bouncing off of each other. And there is this term called counter, where
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
you say something, and then someone says something on top of it. Um, and and a lot of the times they get some criticism, in the sense that, hey, do you work always within your comfort zone? You always have these set of actors. But I feel like they just know each other so well that they love that creative space, right?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Have you found that as well while working with other people, in
Oh,
where
yeah,
your
yeah.
friendships just develop good
Yes.
comedy?
Yes, so I am an introvert. I am one till date. So I generally take a long time to open up to people, to form new friends and all that. So, but definitely this theater and stand-up comedy journey has connected me to a lot of people here in the Bay Area and throughout the country as well, which I am sure I wouldn't have otherwise gotten those relationships, right? And I've also seen that when I start working on a material, or when a friend starts working on a material, when we bounce off ideas, when we brainstorm on those, it grows leaps and bounds. The number of jokes that gets added to the material like exponentially grows. So when we actually started this, what we used to do is we used to do these early morning like jamming sessions. We call it joke jamming, just like music jamming, right? Like Saturday morning, 6 o'clock, a bunch of us would just meet randomly in one of our houses, just grab coffee and bagels, and starting 6:30 till 9:30 in the morning, before rest of the family wakes up, we are like done with 2-3 hours of jamming. So everybody brings in a topic that they want to write about for their next stand-up material, and then everybody else just brainstorms and contributes jokes. So we don't do that anymore because it's very difficult to scale and just sustain, do that continuously. But we've tried doing something like that. And even now, if somebody comes up with a material, or if I come up with a premise that I want to write a stand-up comedy set on, I bounce it off of some of my close friends, and they're all part of the stand-up group. And also when you do these jamming sessions, right, you understand the personality of the comic that's coming up with that particular content. So for example, if I'm coming up with a topic, my friends would know what is my style of jokes or my style of delivery, so they start thinking like me. And when I contribute jokes to one of my other friends, I typically note what zone they are in or how is their delivery, and then you start thinking for them, like them, which is all very interesting. Uh,
Okay. So it's been around, I would say, 11, 12 years since you seriously started to take up comedy. Is that a...
yeah, 2007 is when I moved to the Bay Area, and since
Okay.
then I've been part of a lot of groups here in the Bay Area. Yeah, but stand-up comedy from 2019, but in general, comedy in theater and short films since 2007.
Right, right, right. Now, I mean, the reason why I asked you this was to just go into the mind of a writer, right? 13 years or whatever is a long time. And has it ever happened that, uh, again, I have heard this from a few directors, is that, they do their best in their first movie. And the reason why I say that is, like, for instance, Gautam Menon, right? Minale and the
Kaka,
movies
kaka.
thereafter, Kaka Kaka. So what I've heard is, they have this wealth of experience that they have trained for over several years, and
Mhm.
then they bring out that in the first, let's say, 2 3 movies, and then they sort of hit a plateau. Has that ever happened to you as a writer, that you hit a ceiling and you just don't know where to go next?
That happens actually all the time, not just the first couple of materials. And for me, especially when I started writing stand-up comedy was very new. So I didn't know how to write, what was the template for comedy and all that. Just wrote something, and we did a couple of shows, and then I posted that video online, and then it crossed about 350K views on YouTube, and then it became viral on WhatsApp, and people started downloading it from YouTube. And then I've gotten the same video like probably more than 10-15 times through multiple other groups, and then people started cutting portions of that video and started making memes, and it went viral on Twitter as well. So what happened after, and that was my first ever stand-up comedy material. And when that went so viral, and then it became really, really popular, I was very scared to come up with my second material. Like whatever I came up with, it felt like it was not as good as the first one. And till date, right, whatever this particular show that I'm touring with my other friend, like we've done 14 shows so far. And outside of these shows, I've done tons of open mics and private events with the same material. So I've probably performed the exact same material 50, 60 times now, and I still have doubts on whether it is as good as the first one because I haven't posted this online. So that fear is always there. And every time we sit to write something new, that I have that problem, especially because I'm never convinced that something is good, and I'm always afraid to try new stuff in open mics also. I think it is maybe because the first one was such a big hit, and uh, that fear is there. Is it as good as the first one?
Yeah,
So
there's that pressure to perform, right? Yeah.
yeah.
So when you're sitting down to write, do you purposely have this thing that, hey, my thought process is going in the same direction, I have to purposely change it to another direction, or do you just let it flow?
No, so like different people write differently, right? Like my friend Anand, he doesn't write a single word on paper. So for him, he just has to keep talking to somebody, and that's how he generates material. But for me, I will have to physically sit down with a screen in front of me with an empty screen, and then I start typing anything and everything that comes to mind. So I don't limit myself, and usually my first draft of any material does not have any jokes. It is just basically whatever I want to talk about or whatever comes to my mind about a particular topic. I just dump down every single detail that comes to mind. It doesn't have to be jokes. It doesn't have to have a flow. It's just a dump of thoughts about that particular topic, and then I start refining it and try to find a story within that, because most of my content I try and have a story to it, a story flow, so that it's also easier for me to remember and narrate it, right? And then probably by the fourth or fifth draft is when I start putting in a structure to it.
Yeah,
And
yeah, that makes sense. Hmm.
yeah.
So now coming back to stand-up comedy, you started in 2019, and you live we both live in the Bay Area, which has a significant Indian population. So again, stand-up comedy is at the end of the day a business, right? But did you do any sort of market study before entering into stand-up comedy? I mean, what I mean by that is, okay, if I can sell 100 tickets, I should be okay. Or if I can sell 250 tickets, I should be okay. Because yeah, there are lots of Tamilians in the area, lots of Indians or South Indians in the area. But were you ever worried about the market that Bay Area has to offer?
So again, since I was doing a lot of theater before getting into stand-up comedy, I had a pretty big network of people that I knew from these various different groups that I was associated with. So I did not have a concern of if people will come and watch me. Whether they will pay or not is secondary, but at least I knew that I probably had at least 50 or 100 people who would just come to support if I was doing something like this. And also I didn't look too much into the business aspects of this to see if I'll make enough money to sustain this and all that, because obviously this is not my full-time job. I have another job, a full-time engineer, and then this was more for passion. So I just wanted to write, go and perform. If I didn't make money, I was okay with that. So, but I just wanted to keep doing this because it gave me a lot of satisfaction and happiness doing something like this. But luckily, in the last 4 years, the club that I'm part of has grown quite a bit, and our friends and comedians have been getting gigs within the state and outside the state across the country to perform. So we've been making some money. Obviously, it's not sufficient to sustain a livelihood here in California, but something on the side.
Yeah, that's awesome. So the journey towards stand-up comedy was not that typical, right? Because in India, if you want to grow as a stand-up comedian, you just go to an open mic, perform, get some eyeballs, and then open for a show, and then so on and so forth. But here, you had uh, quite a few audience in theater, and you were able to bring that audience to your stand-up comedy.
Yeah.
Awesome. So now let's get to your comedy club. It's a fantastic uh, platform, I would say, for potential stand-up comedians, especially based out of the Bay Area. Tell me more about how that thought process. I know you touched briefly about your interaction with Evam Karthik, but did you ever anticipate any risk, or did you wanted to start it low key and then see it grow? How did that whole seed come into your mind?
So, like I said, we when I met Karthik in 2019, and he suggested that why don't you start something on your own? I was intrigued by what he said, but I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to do that. And then I just put it on the back burner. And then a month later, I was traveling to India. And then I went and performed in an open mic at Avam. So they gave me a 4 minute slot, and then I was asked to perform, and then I performed, and then people loved it. It was good. The reception was great. So I came back, and when I came back to the US, I went and spoke to my friend Anant, who's also the co-founder of the club, and said, "Hey," and he was going to India the following month. I said, "Why don't you also go and perform at Avam?" So he went, he performed, and he was also very excited. Then once he came back, we said, we'll have to do something here, because that high, we were not able to get out of it, and we really wanted to keep doing that.
And
And
if you delayed it any further, you would probably not have started it.
yeah, and there was no platform here in the US to do something like that. And then we thought, okay, Karthik said this, why don't we try and start something? We weren't sure, like, because running, so Bldg 18 Comedy Club, the club that we have, so myself and Anant are the
Oh,
co-founders.
before anything, why did you name it Bldg 18?
That's because so Anant and I, we've been here writing in the Bay Area for the last 13, 14 years across all these theater groups and short films and all that. So what used to happen in those days, 2007, 8, all these theater groups, like we had huge productions, 20, 25 actors and all that, right? So getting together to rehearse is not possible in anybody's house, like with 25 people coming in for like half a day over the weekend for rehearsal. So what we used to do is we used to practice in Cisco. So Cisco allowed that. Cisco as a company encouraged all these nonprofit organizations and arts and theater and all that. So we had a bunch of friends, part of the theater group, who used to work at Cisco. So during the weekends, they would just badge us in, and we'll all go into Cisco Bldg 18 on Tasman and Cisco Way.
Yeah, I've heard that Intel also does it. Intel, especially for dance, they
Yeah,
they
yeah.
allow that.
So we used to go and just book a huge conference room that can fit in about 100 people, and then we used to rehearse there. And then after that, when we started writing together for other theater groups, we used to go to Cisco, sit there and write, because any creative writing at home is very difficult, because there's a lot of distraction from family, kids, and all that. So over the weekend, we'll just go to Cisco, get a conference room, use the whiteboard, and then just brainstorm script ideas and all that. So we've been doing a lot of creative work in that particular Bldg 18 of Cisco. So, and I did not work for Cisco ever, and my friend Anant was also not at Cisco. We just had friends working there. And since all our creative work for over about 13, 14 years happened in that particular building, we thought we'll just name it Bldg 18.
Fantastic. That's a good tribute to to all those memories as well. Okay,
Yeah.
so coming back to you and Anand having
Yeah.
performed in the uh, opening
Avam.
act, yeah,
Open.
Evam opening act. You guys come back and then talk about starting Bldg 18.
And then we said, okay, let's start something, but we weren't sure if we'll be able to manage the logistics. And we wanted to register it as a company in the Bay Area. We didn't want to do it like a nonprofit or like an informal thing. So in a couple of days, we went and found out how to register it as a company. And now Bldg 18 is a registered company, LLC, in the Bay Area. And then we started off with 5 people, like myself, Anant, and 3 other friends. That's we 5 of us. We started doing open mics every Friday. So we decided we'll perform every Friday in front of an audience, and open mics are free for everybody. People can just come in and watch us. And we had to find a place to do this open mic. We didn't want to do it in any of our homes or garages because we thought that would be informal and people won't take us seriously. So we wanted a professional place to go do this. So we said we'll rent a studio every Friday for an hour. So we started paying every Friday out of our own pocket. So that was the investment, initial investment. We started paying out of pocket for a year.
And how
Uh,
much was that
uh,
approximately?
I think when we started out, it was $35 per hour every Friday, and then now it's about $55 every Friday. So we started doing that, and then so we started so one thing we decided at the right at the start was no matter what, we will do it every Friday. That was, I think, a key decision that we made. There were a lot of friends who said, "Hey, do you think you'll get audience every Friday? Maybe you should do first Friday of every month, or last Friday of every month, or second Friday of every month." But we were very clear. We didn't want people to have the confusion. Hey, is the open mic happening today? Is it the first Friday? Is it the third Friday? Right?
Yeah, it's that consistency that goes a long way,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
So every Friday, 7:30 to 8:30, rain or shine, COVID, no COVID, whatever it is, every Friday, 7:30 to 8:30, Building 18 open mic happens in the Bay Area. And we've been doing it for 4.5 years, and we have not missed even a single Friday.
That is awesome.
Uh,
So how did you invite people to do the open mic registration
yeah,
form?
yeah, we just started a Facebook page and we started posting on it saying, hey, open mics happening, stand-up comedy mics. It is free for you. You can just come and watch. And slowly over word of mouth is when we started getting more and more people. And till date, we have about at least 20-25 people every open mic coming and watching us perform. And like people go, we've grown mainly through word of mouth. So that's how it's been. And then so that consistency, I think, what that is what has gotten us to where we are today, in terms of, so we started with 5 comics, like I said, and today we have more than 55 uh, performing comics all over the country, not just in the Bay Area. So we also do Zoom open mic. So during the pandemic, we shifted from in-person to Zoom. And that's when we started getting people with stand-up comedy interest from like Seattle, New Jersey, Chicago, Michigan, Florida, North Carolina, Atlanta, Dallas, right? So, and then once the pandemic lockdown was done and we moved back to in person, we continued to do the Zoom open mics just to keep in touch with all these comics across the country.
Hmm.
So we have now a small network of stand-up comedians across the US who are regularly participating in our shows, opening for comedians who come from India, perform corporate shows across the country, perform private events across the country. So that small network that we've built over the last 4.5 years, we are continuing to work with those folks, and their journey continues with Building 18.
That's amazing. But one thing that I wanted to ask was, uh, does Building 18 help these 50 comedians get shows as well?
Yeah. So yes, definitely, because open mics is a place where comics come and try out their material, and once they keep doing it repeatedly in open mics, and once the material kind of fine tunes and it gets to a point where you can actually ticket for that material, put them on shows, put them on private events or corporate shows. Yes, Building 18 will help people get opportunities to go perform in corporate shows and private events, and also ticketed shows where Building 18 conducts regular ticketed shows. And we also do a lot of opening acts for comedians who travel from India. And not these are not just Tamil comedians, like Tamil, Hindi comedians as well. So, and we started primarily as a Tanglish comedy club. The tagline for Building 18 was America's first Tanglish comedy club. But today we have comics who perform regularly in Tamil, English, Hindi. We've had a couple of comics perform in Marathi as well. So yeah, we've grown quite a bit.
So this list of 50 comedians spans different
Yeah,
languages, right? Including Marathi, Hindi,
yeah.
English, and Tamil. Okay. Um, so so what I wanted to ask was, you guys are running Building 18, and there are 50 comedians. And not all 50 comedians will be of a certain standard, right? Like it's like a classroom. Some may be better than the others. Some may not be good enough to have a ticketed show. So is there a judging mechanism, or is there a mentorship mechanism wherein you decide that someone is, ready enough? It's something like an arangetram, right?
Yeah.
Is ready enough to have a ticketed show. And what is the basis? I just want to get into your head on what the vetting mechanism is.
So the beautiful thing about comedy is, right, like you said, it is like a classroom. But the thing is that in this classroom of comedy, the same student is not the best student every Friday. So right, because there are good and bad days for everybody. Even the biggest names in comedy, they will have their bad days while performing, because there are a lot of factors that go into play. The same jokes that work on a particular Friday will not work the next Friday, um, because there is like delivery, the modulation, the kind of audience, how you set it up, who goes before you, who comes after you. There are so many things that goes into this set, right? So there is no formal mentorship or a judging mechanism as such, because just that this wouldn't scale. And the truth is, nobody knows what works. Like, nobody is in a position to go mentor others. We are all novice or beginners in stand-up comedy. We don't have somebody who's proven or who has a Netflix special here at Building 18. So nobody knows actually what works. There are people who come and rock the very first open mic that they perform in, and there are people like I have bombed so many times in open mics, right? Like, people who've done shows, many shows, they bomb as well. So the only judging criteria that we have is people who regularly come to open mics every Friday. Consistency in open mics is important. Like, it's like net practice, right? People who attend their cricket nets regularly, they get to probably perform in a match. They get picked for the team. So that is one criteria that we look at: consistency in attending open mics. And say if somebody performs a particular material across 4 or 5 open mics, the audience reception is right there for everybody to see, including the performer. If the material gets a great response for like 3 out of 5 times, or even 2 out of 5 times, then we know there is something in the material that works. So that's how we kind of pick. And also, typically when we do lineup shows with 6 or 7 comedians in a particular show, there are a lot of factors, like the difference in the kind of material, the modulation. We don't want similar sounding people, all 7 to be similar sounding people, right? Styles, the style of content, style of performance, all of that. So a lot of thing goes into play in how we pick comedians for a particular show.
Is there any restriction that everyone has to be clean, or is
No,
it
no,
just
no.
something? Yeah.
No, no, no. So Building 18 does not restrict anybody on their content. So the comedian, the performer owns the content, and they are completely responsible for whatever they are performing. So Building 18 does not restrict, does not tell people what they have to do. It's all up to them.
Hmm.
There are restrictions when you go for corporate events, because corporates, they have their set of restrictions. So then we go and look to see who has a clean material with no political jokes, no religious jokes, no racial jokes, and things like that. But within Building 18, in Building 18 shows, there are no restrictions.
But personally, are you a proponent of clean comedy?
I'm not a proponent, I would say, but I am a clean comedian. Like, I am not comfortable doing adult content on stage. So I can only write clean material, and I am only comfortable performing clean material. But that doesn't mean I wouldn't enjoy other kinds. But just personally, I am on the cleaner side.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, and also mentoring takes up a lot of time, right? Like
Yeah,
vetting
it's
50
not
people,
scalable.
it
Yeah, yeah.
is absolutely not scalable. So now coming back to your own comedy here in the US. Starting up is very difficult for everybody, right? Your first YouTube channel, your first podcast, no matter what, it's completely different if you're famous in some other field, and like you did for theater, bring that audience into stand-up comedy. But now touring out of Bay Area, how did you manage to get the kind of audience that you expected or that you wished in, let's say, East Coast or Boston or Connecticut?
So a couple of things actually played a role in this. One was expanding the network of Building 18 outside of Bay Area through our Zoom open mics, right? So we have like huge supporters of Building 18 in Seattle, Connecticut, Boston, Raleigh, and all these places. So we have people on the ground who can go spread the word about Building 18. So that's one. And second thing is both mine and Anand's video that we put out on YouTube went viral to an extent, and people had seen our videos. So it was a little easier for the local Building 18 folks in each city to go tell their friends and family saying, hey, remember this guy on WhatsApp? This guy is coming to town to perform. So that's how we sold our first set of shows in each of these cities. Using our local supporters and our videos on YouTube. And we also started doing reels on Instagram, myself and Anant, and those reels started doing really well.
They have taken off like crazy, I can tell you
Yeah,
that.
yeah. So that is something that we did not anticipate. We just did one for fun. This happened a year back when Ilayaraja and A.R. Rahman were coming to the Bay Area to perform in the same month, 2 weeks apart. So we both were sitting inside our car and thinking, oh, why don't we do some kind of a promo video for this? Though we were nowhere connected to any of these shows. And then we thought, okay, you are A.R. Rahman fan and I'm Ilayaraja fan, and we both are fighting with each other on who's the best. So that's how we did one, and that really did well and it took off. And then we started doing fan series like Kohli fan versus a Dhoni fan, Rajni fan versus a Kamal fan, and then coffee fan versus tea fan. Right
Yeah, the
thing.
roti versus rice, I personally enjoyed that quite a bit.
Roti fan versus rice fan. So we've done about 30, 35 of those. And those videos really helped pull in people in each city, because people have seen us in those videos. And when we use that medium to tell, hey, we are coming to perform live in Boston, we had people coming over. So that's how we started building our audience base across the country outside of Bay Area. And actually, it's very humbling and also super exciting to go perform for audience outside of your city, because uh, it's 100% unknown audience. Like, you don't know them and they don't know you personally. So the content has to be really good for them to appreciate. At home, when you perform, you have a whole bunch of friends and family watching the show. So at some level, they are always going to say, hey, it's good, just to encourage you, right? It doesn't have to be really good. People are always going to just come up to you and say, hey, it was a good show. But outside, when you go and when you're performing to complete strangers and when they applaud, that is when you really know that your content works.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you were telling me about the high that you get when you get a standing ovation at the end and whatnot, right? And it must have been the same kind of high when you see that people in other cities who are fans of what you do are really taking it up on themselves to, spread the word that hey, these guys are coming to the city. You guys should come join the show. So that must have been a
Yeah,
different
yeah.
kind of high.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I think we were just lucky because COVID happened, Zoom open mics happened, and we were able to build this network. And we have really good friends who are more like family now. Like, when we travel for shows, we don't have to worry about accommodation or food. We just go to these folks, we stay at their place, and they're all more like family now
Yeah.
than.
Yeah, and if they're outside Bay Area, they'll have huge homes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And the best part was we haven't even met a lot of these people in person. We are only connected through Zoom. And when the first time we go and stay at their place, it's like we've always been in touch. Like, we are childhood friends, right? That it never occurred that we are meeting for the first time.
Yeah,
So
that's one thing with friendships, right? Like, you never know. I mean, it's not like you have to talk every single day and all that. Like, you just don't know how you click with someone else, and it's quite a miracle. Yeah, there's no standard recipe for that.
yeah.
Yeah. So now, coming back to performing comedy in different cities, we spoke about this before as well, that the demographics is completely different, right? A Bay Area demographic is completely different from East Coast demographics, even within the Tamil audience.
Yeah,
Like you were mentioning to me how the Tamil population in the East Coast, even though majority of them might be from Chennai, there is still quite a bit of people who moved in from Madurai or Tirunelveli.
yeah.
However, in Bay Area, it's mostly Chennai. Chennai engineering masters and so on and so forth. So, have you had to tailor your script in such a way that people from different demographics enjoy? And have you had some really bad experience when the jokes did not land and they just bombed?
Yeah, that happens all the time, and more than demographics, it's also the kind like Bay Area, for example, right? A lot of them are software engineers by default, and they work for these big corporations or product companies. And then you go to some city on the East Coast or Northeast, right? And most of them are part of CTS, TCS, Infosys, Wipro, and then they are on site. They are working for consulting companies. They are maybe project managers. They are not engineers as such. People are in different roles. And then we've performed once in Houston and in Florida, and then the audience base is mostly doctors. So you go and tell them tech jokes, it's not going to work because like 70-80% of the crowd is all doctors. So yes, it does have an impact on the kind of jokes that you deliver and write. But we kind of do a small study on the audience base and the city before we go to, and we do write some custom tailor-made jokes for them. So initially, when you go perform, say for example, you go to a city where there are majority doctors, you do like a 3-4 minute set on doctors and doctors in the US and how Indian doctors operate here or something like that. And then within that first 5 minutes, you have them on your side, and then you do your tech jokes, and it'll still work.
Uh,
Right? So getting the audience on your side in the first few minutes is key. Um, like for example, the Florida show, right? One, they were all doctors, and the second, most of them were like their kids were off to college or their kids are married and settled down in the US, and they are like 55, 60, 65-year olds, right? And you cannot go and tell them jokes about you just got married 3 months back and things like that, or you cannot tell jokes about your grad school or your batch, because there's a complete generational gap there, right? So you will have to tailor some jokes to the audience, and it happens all the time. And that's the more exciting part about traveling and performing in different cities for different audiences, because if you're continuing to perform only in the Bay Area, you are kind of tuned to the mindset of the kind of people that come and watch your shows. So there is a comfort zone that you will eventually settle into and say, you kind of figure out what kind of jokes to say and how to say it. But when you constantly keep going to these other cities and performing for different kinds of people, that's when it becomes challenging and you want to push yourself and explore other areas as well.
Yeah, it's amazing how many facets of comedy we have these days. You are trying to break barriers and cater to different demographics, and then there is this tech roast show. They are like, okay, we are only going to do tech, and they're going to travel to India now. Uh, that's amazing. Like every no, what I'm trying to say is that every niche has an audience,
Yeah.
and to your point of that initial 10-15 seconds, right? I feel it's the same with everything. The first 15 seconds of a YouTube video, be it thumbnail, and then the attention span just goes down. But if you can catch the attention, then you can probably retain the audience for quite some more time. um, Now, coming back to Building 18 and handling or taking care of the logistics of comedians traveling from India, uh, I want to know more about how these tours are operated. So, let's say Karthik Kumar is coming to perform in 18 different cities in the US. Walk me through that process on how you get to know that they are coming, and the process behind it.
Okay. So Bldg 18, we have gotten into tour productions just now. We are producing our first tour for Praveen Kumar from Chennai. He's a leading comedian. He has specials on Amazon Prime, and he's one of the early starters of stand-up comedy scene in Chennai. So we've started producing his show now. So one good thing about Bldg 18 right now is, since we were the first Tanglish comedy club in the US, we are connected to the comedians in India quite closely, at least the ones from the South. We work very closely with a lot of those comics, and then we are connected with most of them there. So when somebody is looking to tour the US, we get to know, either we reach out or they reach out to us, and then we talk about how we can be part of their tours and things like that. So when we decided to produce Praveen Kumar's tour, the first thing that we'll have to do is to apply a performer visa for him, or for any person that comes in, right? So they come on a visa called P3, which is reserved for performing arts. So Bldg 18 in this case is the employer, and Praveen Kumar. So we are applying for a visa for Praveen Kumar. And then we'll have to put together a lot of data to show that he is a leading comedian and he does this full time. And then he's going to tour around the US, and there is a market for his brand of comedy and things like that. So you'll have to give a lot of documentation to the USCIS to get the visa approved. And once the visa comes through, then we'll have to take care of his international flights, domestic flights within the country, his medical insurance, travel insurance, his stay, accommodation, food, and everything. And then you come up with an itinerary of how many cities can he go and perform in. And obviously, people coming from India, they can only perform here on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, only the weekends. Weekdays, people are not going to go and watch a stand-up comedy show. So then we'll have to chart out an itinerary that is economical in terms of flights and travel and all that.
Yeah.
And go ahead.
Let me pause you on that P3 visa. Is that only for Praveen, or can P3 go for his team as well, if he's bringing someone like a? I mean, this probably doesn't apply to stand-up comedians, but people bring their own makeup
Yeah,
men
that
and
I'm not sure if
yeah,
there is
yeah.
a separate visa category
Yeah,
for.
I have an interesting story to tell. So in the mid 1990s, there were these Tamil associations, Malayalam associations. They used to have orchestra. It was a
Yeah,
lineup
yeah,
of
yeah.
orchestra, and there was an Ilayaraja show, or probably uh, probably the second tier singers. Singers who did playback, but at the same time were not the top of the line. So they used to visit US quite a lot. And
Hmm.
back in those days, a lot of people just wanted to move to the US. So they would act as the violinist for that orchestra, or a tabla player for that orchestra, and then go to the consulate. And apparently, only one person had to attend the interview. So
Hmm.
the lead had to attend the interview, and the
Okay.
lead would be like, "Hey, these are the guys who I am bringing." And they will all get their visa stamped because it's a performance visa, right? They are not going to stay. And this happened with the singer Madhu Balakrishnan. So Madhu Balakrishnan had an orchestra, and it turned out that some of them were not even violin players. They were not even tabla players. And then not USCIS, but the embassy guys figured that out. And then he was denied US visa, and he has not been able to perform in the US forever.
Oh.
And apparently he has hired some lawyers to get that sorted. But poor guy has lost so much, so many concerts, and lost out on so much. So yeah, it was a thing in the 90s, and they would just come here and dump their passport, work in a gas station and all of that. But I mean, I'm sure there is a better vetting mechanism now. But yeah, so after the visa, you were talking
Yeah, and
about.
then we identify cities based on like the audience, the kind of local marketing resources that we have in each city, and then that we come up with the budgeting of overall cost for the entire tour, and then we have targets on how many cities should we perform in, and how many tickets should we sell to break even to make a profit, and things like that. And so that's how we started off with Praveen's entire US tour, and he finished a couple of shows now, and then we have more shows coming up in the next few weeks. So yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah. So between Monday and Friday, they just chill or prep for the
Yeah.
show.
They just chill, go visit their friends, family, look around, travel, sightsee. That's it. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. And one more point that I wanted to cover was renting of auditoriums or halls or
Yeah. Yeah.
whatever. So Building 18 takes care of that.
Yes, we book the theaters in every city. There is an insurance that needs to be there for the venue as well. We take care of that, and then we take care of getting the comic to the local cities, making sure he gets accommodated well, his food and everything is taken care. And then on the day of the show, we arrange somebody to pick him up from the hotel, take him to the venue. The show is done, and all of that. Then we record feedback from the audience post show. We edit that immediately and post it online, so that helps push tickets in other cities and things. Yeah, so there's a lot of work involved.
That's amazing. And I'm glad you are able to do this because USA is a huge market for comedians, and I'm glad the whole stand-up comedy scene is picking up. USA is where stand-up comedy all started, but I'm glad the ticket sales are booming, and especially after the pandemic, I think
Yeah,
it's been such a welcome change with people traveling more and people being more open to going to shows and watching performances. And I don't think that can ever uh, go old, right? Watching a live performance is completely
yeah,
different
yeah.
from a Netflix special or an Amazon special.
But I think still people, at least in the Indian, South Indian, maybe Tamil audience, right? They are still not uh, open to come and watch a live performance, because if you see Hindi comics, right, like comedians who perform in Hindi who come from India, they sell like easily 3,000, 2,000 tickets per show here in the Bay Area. But the same does not apply to a regional comic, right? Selling 500 tickets, 400 tickets is a huge deal for a regional comedian.
So that
From
has nothing to do with the number of Tamilians, but the attitude, not the attitude, but the perception of them towards
Yeah, that
stand-up.
that is also there. The obviously the Hindi population is much bigger, but I think people in general, I think for any live art, right, people always ask for like, hey, why don't you send me a YouTube video link and I'll watch it later. But watching on YouTube is not the same as in watching it live. But once they come to our shows and watch us, then they realize that this has to be watched live, and they go tell about it to their friends. And then, because we've done this show for like 4 times in Dallas and thrice in Seattle, and every time the folks who came to the previous show, they go spread about the show and then they send their friends and family. So that's how it worked. But typically people who've never watched a live comedy show, their general mindset is, hey, I'll watch it on YouTube later.
Yeah,
Or
I think one way I just thought about this. One way is to upload YouTube videos of crowd work, so that
yeah,
people are tempted to see the crowd work and be like, "Hey, I want to be a part of this," and then they
yes,
may join.
yeah.
Okay, GK. Before we end, I want to ask you about how you got into Ashwin's show during the IPL of 2022. Tell me the whole story.
Yeah, I think they were looking for somebody to represent fans of every franchisee on their show. And then they put out some kind of a contest or something. And I also believe like Ashwin's manager, or the person in Ashwin's team who takes care of all of this, has also probably seen my Insta profile or video, and then we
That
interact.
viral video, maybe that got.
Yeah, yeah. And then we briefly interacted on Insta, and then he asked, like, hey, do you want to come on this show? And I said, okay. But initially, it was just planned to be one show. So I was there on the first show with Ashwin. And after that, Ashwin put out a poll on YouTube asking, which fan do you want to see again? And then there was a CSK fan, which was me, and then Mumbai Indians fan, RCB fan, so many others. And then the people voted unanimously for me. So I think that's why he called me. And then I was there for the entire season. I was there in every single video of Ashwin's that season. And then the following year also probably on a few videos. So it was total fun. I was not sure how would the recordings go and how would it be to talk to Ashwin, but talking to Ashwin was just like talking to another friend. Um, like he was so easy to talk to and work with, and he just gave me a lot of space to say whatever because that was his show. People were watching it for Ashwin, and then I got like about 4 or 5 minutes of screen time on his show, and that really helped me also because people started recognizing me. Like my Insta following went up, and because of that, that helped with my stand-up shows as well, and my other videos on YouTube and Insta also started getting traction. So like it helped me big time being on Ashwin's show.
Yeah, it's lovely how, collaboration eventually makes both people grow.
Yeah.
That's usually the case. Did you prepare for those?
Yeah, so yes, but the thing was, most of the recordings, I wouldn't know what time the recording would happen because it all heavily dependent on Ashwin's availability through his net practice and meetings and other things. So sometimes I would always hold my cell phone in my hand and sleep. I wouldn't because my phone will be on silent because
Sounds like on call.
yeah, because my daughter and wife were also in the same room sleeping. So I will hold the phone and then it will vibrate at like 2:30 or 2:45 in the morning. And then I'll suddenly wake up, wash my face, and then get ready for the show.
Put on the CSK shirt as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So in terms of preparation, yes, I would come up with some basic jokes. I also have a bunch of friends here. So I'll brainstorm with them before the show, get some ideas, get some jokes on what to talk, how to talk, and all that. And then after that, it was just on the flow because it all also depends on the kind of questions Ashwin will ask. Like you can have whatever you want prepared, but if that kind of an opportunity does not come, you cannot use those jokes. So a lot of episodes I went in with maybe more jokes, but I didn't have an opportunity to say them. And a lot of them are also on the spot because you cannot anticipate what Ashwin is going to ask you or tell you. And then the kind of counter that you give back to whatever he says has to be on the spot. Those cannot be prepared.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah,
would
I
say,
mean, one thing I noticed was you're very good with play of words and referencing. Is that something that you get impromptu, or I'm just amazed at?
yeah, wordplay is something that I'm used to. I do that quite a bit even in my stand-up. And then Tamil cinema references and other references, I think that's because I watch a lot of movies as well, and it just, yeah, I don't know, naturally comes through
Uh,
maybe.
yeah, that makes sense. So I see you follow cricket quite a bit. What are your predictions for the World Cup?
I obviously want India to win, but I'm not too confident because I'm not sure if we are, because England, Australia, and to an extent South Africa, they're all in really good. Even Sri Lanka, for that matter, except for that last match in the Asia Cup, they have a pretty good side. So I'm not sure if it is going to be tough for India to win this, but yeah, hopefully we win.
Yeah, what do you think is the biggest difference between the 2011? I mean, keeping Dhoni aside, of course, that's a different
Yeah, 2011,
gene.
not just Dhoni, right? We had a lot of others as well, a lot of match winners in the team. Now, also, on paper at least, we seem to have a lot of match winners in 23 now, but the performance has been very inconsistent. Like Surya Kumar Yadav, for example, he's very good, but again, in one days, his performance has been pretty inconsistent. Same with Rohit Sharma, and Bumrah's back after a very long injury gap. So we have a lot of match winners on paper, but are they consistent enough to just bulldoze through the other teams in the World Cup? Not too sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like in 2011, there were a lot of batsmen who could bowl, and that came in handy. And Dhoni was a master of captaining spin. So I
Mm.
think that helped a lot. And I feel like with this Indian team, so many players have played in the last 2-3 years that there is no sample space of who is good and who is
Yeah,
consistent and who is consistent across formats, across different match conditions and whatnot.
right.
So I think that's also a problem. I mean, as long as we don't face New Zealand, I think it should be okay. But GK, thank you so much for your time. It was lovely talking to you, and I wish you and Building 18 all the very best. I think what you started was probably one of the first things anyone has done in America, and I wish you all the very best with
But
Bldg.
thanks a lot, Bala. It was a lot of fun talking to you because I don't get to talk about all this on a regular basis, right? So it was also a good trip down memory lane for me, and I'm super excited to see this podcast come out. And also, all the very best. I love the way how you reach out to people from different walks of life and across all your podcasts, right? Like you've been talking to so many people from varied background. I'm jealous. How do you even find these people and convince them to come on your podcast?
Yeah, I think the credit has to go to them, because they were just humble enough to give me 1 hour or 1.5 hours of their time. So, and I think with me getting an opening with Krish Ashok initially was a big deal, and I was able to sort of leverage that, and people did check out that episode quite a bit. So they were happy to come on my show. Again, that applies only to Indian guests, but um, guests in America were also very, very, very down to earth, humble, and it's amazing how many people agreed and also showed up on time and all of that. So yeah, I don't know, I'm just hoping that this continues, and I hope to get better as a host as well.
Yeah, I'm very new to this whole podcast zone because for a long time I've always thought podcast is generally not interesting. Who will sit and listen to something that's so long? But I'm off late addicted to podcasts, and some of yours have been super interesting. So looking forward to see more unique, varied guests on your show, and yeah, super excited for that. And thank you for having me. It was fun chatting with you.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you so much, GK. See you.
Thanks.